So for those of you who don't know, the brand has been around for really quite some time. We were founded in 1980, and at the beginning there was an engineer working on amplifiers in his house. His name was David Reich, and he sold a small number of these amps, and he came to know an audiophile named Mike Viglis. Mike was a Greek immigrant living in Canada. He had become very wealthy selling Ford trucks. And I don't know if you've heard the joke about how do you make a small fortune in the audio business?
You bring a big one.
You start with the large one, exactly. So it's a case where Mike, who happened to have a fair amount of money, thought, you know, I could help this guy and we could make a real business out of this. It's interesting also how many times a wealthy person gets involved with an audio company, not because they think they're going to make money, but because they'll get a better price on the product. Pretty common. So anyway, he dumped some money into the company. They changed the name. It started as Ellison, and Mike wanted the name to do two things. First, the original amplifier design was a Class A, Alpha A amplifier design. Everybody knows Class A amplifiers sound the best, right? So he wanted the brand to be a double entendre. So you pronounce it Class A, just like the type of original amplifier. He also wanted the name to reflect the origins of the company, which is French Canada. And so with a single accent on an E, he achieved both things, and we have Class A. So Mike and David went into business together, and for the next 20 years, he navigated a great deal of change in the audio marketplace. 1980, there was no digital yet. So he introduced digital audio to Class A. He introduced multi-channel AV products, custom installation products, so quite a few things. And then around the year 2000, Mr. Joe Atkins of B&W came along. And he developed a relationship with Mike because at the time B&W was looking for an electronics brand that could be complementary to the 800 series loudspeakers. There were other speaker companies making alliance with electronics companies building loudspeakers. It was a common thing at that time to be selling systems. So B&W and Class A began a distribution relationship, and then more and more built from that. This handsome young guy came aboard in 2002. And I haven't changed that much, have I? I look pretty much the same, I think, maybe a little younger.
Nice tie.
I have new glasses. So I joined in 2002. Before that, I had spent about 17 years with Madrigal Audio Labs. You may know Madrigal as the maker of Mark Levinson and also later Proceed Electronics. So this is really only my second job as an adult. And as they say, Joe made an offer I couldn't refuse. So I left Madrigal. I joined the B&W Group and Class A, and the goal at that time was to build a Class A design team and to develop a new range of products. So we began to hire engineers, put a substantial team in place. We started with a single engineer and built it over a short period of time. In 2004, we launched what we call the Delta Series. The Delta Series, the name was chosen because in science and math, delta refers to difference or change. And we really think that our approach to these products is different. And so we thought that that was an appropriate name. It's also a Greek letter. And Mike, being a Greek immigrant, it was an acknowledgement of his history. There was also at that time an Omega series. Later came a Sigma series. So we've used Greek letters really in honor of Mike. So I should have a clicker. I won't read all this stuff to you, but I'll say that in in recent times, we've been super fortunate. A year ago, last January, after B&W had been sold by Joe, the new owners, decided that they didn't have any use for us. And from a business point of view, I totally understand it. It did hurt my feelings, but that's life. Things go like that sometimes. And Sound United said, you know what, we could use this brand. And so we live to fight another day. And part of coming aboard at Sound United is to reinvent ourselves, to think, well, what are the things that really do matter to us? Let's make sure that we build this brand in an authentic way. So we've been working on brand positioning, which includes quite a number of different things. There's a vision, there's a philosophy, there's a mission, and there are values. And so all those things are important to us. I'll just say there's one thing in particular on some of the graphics. You see, high end is to us, high end is passion, discovery, experience, and technical exploration. And I think that is it's an important statement about how we view high end and how we view our role. Passion says that we care about music, that you care about music, and that music's important, that you can be moved and motivated by it. Discovery applies to both the development process and the listening experience. We're always looking for more. Experience acknowledges that you have to have experience to apply the technology and the science that's required to move the art. It also refers to the listening experience. And then technical exploration acknowledges that experimentation and failure are a part of success, and without it, we really have no high end. Say one thing here about our values. It says that we respect the blood, sweat, and tears, the passion, determination, and sacrifices of everyone who's gone above and beyond for music. I think if you think about musical artists who all of us in this room know, I think every one of them has made some sacrifice for music. Every one of them has devoted an enormous amount of time practicing, perfecting the craft. To us, that is inspiring. It is really what motivates us. Thinking about the way those, like I couldn't play an instrument to save my life, and I really respect those people who can. But I can devote my talents in other ways, and hopefully we'll have products that will bring that music and bring joy to all the listeners who own them. So this is our new tagline, Start Listening. I like it very much for a couple of reasons. One is it implies that we haven't really listened yet. And so it's a bit of a challenge to listen more carefully. It's also clearly an audio thing. So it's not just generic about technology or something like that. It's indicating that just like when we heard music or a high-end system for the first time, we can discover a lot by listening, and listening more carefully to a system like that with these new products is value. It brings value. Very quickly, just to explain who our customers are. In the first instance, there are people who already own Classé. We have a big following of fans around the world who have owned Classé components, and we believe that they're the most likely people to instantly gravitate toward the new ones. we also have audiophiles and enthusiasts who've not owned Classé for whatever reason, and we think that that once they understand the benefits of the new products, there's a good chance that they will become customers too. A third group of customers is luxury buyers. And these are people who aren't necessarily, well, they're definitely not audiophiles or enthusiasts. In some cases, they don't really know anything about audio, but they hear a system and they think, wow, that's great. I'd like to have that. And they've got the money to afford it, so they become buyers. It's interesting to me how sometimes people think about luxury brands and they think that, well, the types of products, Classé and others that are here at this show, they're not household names, and that's a bad thing. And I don't really see it as a bad thing. I think luxury buyers know that they don't know every brand. Like if you're a watch guy, chances are you can't name every brand of watch. It's just the way luxury products are. There are always things to discover. And the way it works is you want to discover those things before your friends do. So a luxury buyer can learn about a Classé component in the afternoon, and that night he can be talking to a friend, mention the word Classé, the friend doesn't know it. He looks at the friend like he's like, what do you mean you don't know this? Knowledge is a status symbol. Oh, by the way, I just want to mention this photo was chosen initially just because these guys looked like our customers. That was it. They just looked like our customers. So you have your engineer, your banker, your doctor, you know, normal guys. But what this photo is actually is from the control room of the Boston Symphony Orchestra. So conductor Nilsson is here, Classé amplifiers off in the corner. This photo was taken on the occasion of their winning yet another Grammy Award for the Shostakovich 5th. In this case, they also won one for the 4th and the 11th, and maybe one other for recording sound quality as well as performance. So if you're a Shostakovich fan, chances are you own some of their recordings. 3 brand pillars. The first is exclusive. Exclusive doesn't mean that it's only one thing. Exclusivity people often narrowly define to say that that only a few people can afford it, and that's true. It is limited because of its price, but exclusivity also means that not everybody knows about it, so it's kind of special to be in the club, and you can't buy it everywhere. Not everybody can sell this kind of product. So exclusivity means several things. Innovative, I mentioned we launched the Delta series. That was in 2004. We were the first audio company to employ a touchscreen control. That was 7 months before the iPod Touch came out. We've done other things. We've developed a special active cooling tunnel that maintains the operating temperature of the amplifier. It's called the icy tunnel, you know, icy. We use Navcom feet. Navcom is think of it as a shock absorbing material, so it's got some compliance, and if you were to push on the foot of this preamplifier, you'd see that it's softer, it's more squishy than the foot of this amplifier, and that's because the amplifier is a lot heavier. So the Navcom feet are formulated, they're tuned to provide the proper isolation for whatever the weight of the product is. We also introduced a special Coroplast packaging, which is very durable and it's reusable. So and it's recyclable. So it has environmental benefits as well as being very very durable and looking, I think, quite sharp. And then lastly, we're proactive. We try to solve problems. I think that that the touchscreen control is one example of that. The active cooling system is another example of that. We were among the first to start integrating the D to A converter with a conventional analog preamp. So the architecture of the preamp is what I think of as a modern or contemporary architecture. Almost everyone today has digital sources, and for most people, it's all they have, or it's mostly all they have. So there are very few analog sources today that are really being used. There are some. There's a turntable. There are some crazy people like me. There are some tuners, but maybe an SACD player. But you don't have 7 or 8 sources typically on the analog side. You have more on the digital side. So we have a lot of connectivity associated with this, and it's designed to be really appropriate for what the modern consumer uses. When Sound United purchased Classé, I reconstituted the design team in Montreal, so we've got the band back together, so to speak, and these guys are hard at work. They're finishing the last bits required to get these new products into production, and then they'll be working on some new models, which I'll mention in just a moment. When we were with B&W, we had moved manufacturing to their facility in Zhuhai, China. If you can put yourself in the position of somebody selling a product that's in this price category, China is not where you really want it to come from. It doesn't have anything to do with its actual quality. It's just an image problem. The side benefit of us being purchased by Sound United is we'll now make the products in Shirakawa, Japan. When I went to this facility, I was really quite surprised. I've been in electronics my whole life. I've never seen anything like this place. It is unbelievable. So first of all, a group of people who work there who are crazy passionate. So they are absolutely serious about everything being perfect, which I love. And they've got machines, they've got so much stuff that I didn't even know existed, that there's no way that we could have landed in a better place to build Classé. This is going to be absolutely the finest quality product that Classé has ever built, and it'll come from the Sound United factory at Shirakawa, the Shirakawa Audio Works. Three technologies. Classé amplification. We don't claim that we're the only people with Classé amplifiers, but we did start with the Classé amplifier, and Classé is something that we're returning to when you look at the design of the new power amplifiers. So we're believers in Classé, and we're implementing it in a way that I think is very impressive. Thermostatically controlled cooling. So we're not the first people to put a fan on an amplifier, but we are the first to thermostatically control it in such a way that you get a stable operating temperature. So it quickly warms up to its ideal temperature, and from that point on, you can drive the amp as hard as you want, and it will always be the same temperature. And then lastly, we put digital tools into the preamplifier to let you solve practical problems. One of the primary problems, I would say, is low frequency performance, because you can't really control that in the room. It's, as you know, it's based on the dimensions of the room and position of your speakers and so on. So in the sweet spot, you might measure a peak at some low frequency caused by reflections that add together. And we have a 5-band parametric EQ that lets you pull that peak down. You might also find there's a dip, and the dip is usually caused by frequencies that cancel. And you can't really undo a dip with equalization, because you just end up with bigger signals canceling each other. So the best solution there is to add a subwoofer. If you put another source of bass in a different physical location, you can get it to fill in the hole that is caused by the other two speakers. So between the bass management, subwoofer out, and the EQ, we can give you very smooth low frequency performance. Tone control means that, unlike in the old days, where a tone control was an analog circuit that added noise, it added distortion, and so it was rejected by the high-end guys who were after absolute clarity. Now, we're in the digital domain. We're changing coefficients. We're basically adapting to different numbers without adding any noise or distortion. So we can, once again, include a tone control if it's done in the digital domain. We have both bass and treble, or if you want, you can set it up as a tilt control. If you remember the old quad tilt control, that was the inspiration for doing that. I think it's brilliant because for most recordings, a small adjustment, half a dB, 1 dB, because it's over a very broad band, it's enough to tame a recording that's a bit too bright, give a little life to one that's a bit too dull. And what I find is with that tool, I end up listening to more of my music collection than I did in the past. So anyway, important tools. Again, not going to read this to you, but just to say we do have sound priorities. Resolution of detail, effortless reproduction of dynamic contrast, and accurate timbre and tonal balance. Those are the three things that we direct our efforts to try to improve with every design that we do. And there are specific things that are necessary in order to achieve those goals. We use an iterative design approach. So again, not to read it to you, but basically there is a process that starts with an idea, it ends with something that you listen to, and then it's starting over and over until you refine it to where you get to your goal. The results are measurable. The one of all this stuff, I'll just point out one thing about the new amplifiers, which is important for their overall performance, and that is this graph here. It is the fact that the THD plus noise is constant across the entire audio band, and it remains constant no matter how much output power you're using. So it's not just at a single output power, it's at maximum, it's at minimum, 1/8 power, half, all the way through. This line is always basically flat. That means that, well, it gives you a certain performance characteristic that I think is pretty amazing. And our sensitivity to distortion is very high in the higher frequencies, but that's typically where the distortion measurement doesn't get made. So anyway, this is one of many technical advantages. I'll just say one other thing is that they're specifically designed to drive low impedance loads. That's why the 8 ohm rating on the new mono amps is 300 watts. The previous model, the 8 ohm rating was 600 watts. But the difference is these deliver a lot more power at 2 ohms than the 600 watt amp did. So it's all about, nobody cheats physics. You get the same amount of energy, and you just have to decide how you're going to deploy it. And in this case, it's in a way that we think is right for the majority of speakers that are out there. I'll only pick out one thing of the features and benefits. This isn't intended to be an exhaustive list, but one of the things we've added to this preamp is FureTech connectors. So if you look on the back, instead of gold-plated connectors across the board, it's all rhodium-plated. So silver. Rhodium is the rarest of precious metals, so it's more expensive than gold. It's more durable than gold, so it will last a lot longer. It's molecularly flat, so it has actually a better contact surface than gold connectors do, and it can be plated directly onto copper, so it doesn't require the barrier metal that gold does. So there are all sorts of advantages for using this kind of connector. There's one huge disadvantage. It costs a fortune. On the amplifiers, we also use the FureTech connectors, and that includes for the speaker binding posts. These are torque guard binding posts, so they're copper posts. You don't want to over tighten them because copper is relatively soft and you can break it. So this is like a torque wrench where when you get to maximum tightness, it just doesn't go any further. It goes click, click, click. So it's the proper amount of tightness and no more. We've also, since we're in Germany, we've also adopted Mundorf caps for our power supply. Similar to Furatech, lots of advantages. These are 4-pole caps. They're able to deliver energy to our amplifier very quickly, very low impedance, very good quality, but they have, like Furatech, a huge disadvantage, which is that they're enormously expensive. So that's what it is. 3 models start the Delta series at 11,000 euros. 10,999 is the preamplifier. At 12,000 is the mono amplifier, and at 14,000 is the stereo amplifier. There's a stereo amp in the back over there with its cover off. So if you wanted to just have a look at what they look like inside, that looks, except for having two input circuits, otherwise it looks very much like the mono would look inside. And then lastly, this is the roadmap. So we're starting here with the pre, the stereo, and the mono. Next will be a 5-channel power amp and an a surround processor. Another huge advantage of being part of Sound United is we have access to not only their capability, but also the parts that they can buy. So when it comes to things like HDMI switching, not only do we get a switching circuit that really works well, all high-end companies, there aren't many that make surround processors, but of the ones who do, we all have to go to somebody to get this done. For us to go to Marantz to get it done is great because it works, and it's also it's a tier 1 company, so they're able to buy these products sooner than other people are. So we can be into the market sooner than the competitors. Later there will be a source component, and then we'll go for a Mega series, which are positioned above Delta. So real uber reference level electronics. So we're all excited about that. This range will always be fairly small, fairly compact. By the time we get here, we'll be back here revising and updating, trying to improve these. So it'll always be a relatively small line. We just want to make some of the best products that you can buy, period. And we're not trying to design things for specific lower cost markets. We have Marantz below us that can address lower price points. Sound United is interested in Classé pursuing what's possible with sound. And so that means we're going from Delta up to Omega as well.